Today we've got a look at quite a lot of the rules for Lord Inquisitor Kyria Draxus, and some very nice looking new stratagems for the Inquisition forces. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we've been covering the new additions to Psychic Awakening and 9th edition as they come out. Today in the Warhammer community article they've given us a look at Kyria Draxus' new rules, including some war gear special rules and some other things that we can infer, and then they've gone on to talk about the Inquisition, which largely seems to be similar to what they had in the White Dwarf Index, but they have gained at least a couple of really cool new stratagems to add to their previous arsenal. Let's jump straight into it then. So as we know, Kyria Draxus herself is going to be an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor, which means that she'll be able to reroll or hit some wounds against Xenos forces, that is, anything that doesn't have Imperial, Chaos or Unaligned keywords. Her stat line seems pretty typical from the Inquisitors. She's got a 6-inch move, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 3, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9 and a 3+ save for that power armor. The vast majority of Inquisitors also tend to have a 5+ save from a refractor field, and with that very technological Xenos power armor, I'd be surprised if she doesn't have that herself. Her stat line is very similar to the other named Inquisitors. They typically have 5 wounds and 4 attacks. A lot of them do have leadership 10, where she only has leadership 9, so she won't be quite as good at commanding your Imperial forces, but she does gain a weapon skill of 2+, which most of the others don't have, unless of course they have chosen to make any changes to them in this new book. She'll be a pretty reasonable combatant when in melee, as she has a power fist, so it's going to be able to take on Space Marines and other things that are around toughness 5 or 6 pretty efficiently indeed. I think it's quite helpful that they gave her a 2+ weapon skill rather than 3+, as otherwise she will be hitting on 4s with her power fist, and that will be just a little bit underwhelming. They have given us the stats for Dirge Singer though, which is the relic shuriken catapult that she carries. It's got an 18-inch range, is assault 2, strength 4, AP nothing and damage 2. And when you roll a 6 to wound, then the AP increases to -3, much like standard Eldar shuriken weapons. From its range, I'd guess it was a Avenger shuriken catapult. Maybe she borrowed it from a Dire Avenger at some point. In terms of special rules, Shang, her psychic familiar, the little Y-back on her shoulder, gives her the power to choose what unit she targets with Smite, provided of course it's within 18 inches. She doesn't have to nominate the closest like you normally do. That does confirm that she's definitely a Psyker. It'd be interesting to see exactly how many casts she gets. The Inquisitorial psychic powers are really quite good. Some like Kotiaz and Eisenhorn can manifest 2, where Greyfax can only manifest 1. I'd certainly be hoping that she'll be able to manifest 2 rather than 1. That way she might actually see some use out of a Smite rather than trying to cast one of the other powers each turn. Next up, she has Paralysis Grenades, which are basically a special move that she can do when she charges into close combat. You can nominate one enemy unit that's within 1 inch of this model, and until the end of the phase, essentially that unit fights last. So it could be particularly good in a big melee brawl, where you already have multiple other enemy units engaged in combat. It could be very powerful in those sort of cases, otherwise I don't think it's going to have all that much effect, as typically having charged she's going to be striking first herself in any rate. So all in all, looks like some very solid rules for her. In general, an all-round fairly efficient combatant. That's really going to depend on her points as to just how valuable she is. Unless she does have special rules though, she doesn't have anything that particularly makes her stand out massively against the other named Inquisitors I feel. No massive boosts to deny such as Greyfax has, and no intercepts rule such as Kotiaz. So unless they're holding back on something for her, then I'd hope that she'd be at least fairly cheap to include in your army, as besides a decent stat line, she isn't really offering anything that most standard Inquisitors don't. Moving on to the other Inquisition rules that we've seen previewed now. A lot of the article was just some reprints of rules that we've already seen in Codex Inquisition, and in general they say that the majority of the book isn't changed. They've just changed a few wordings in places, and added in a few powerful rules such as the stratagems that we'll get onto, but it sounds like they're not making massive major revisions to how the Inquisition works. For people who already own the White Dwarf with Inquisition, I can see it being sort of annoying to have to buy an entire other book to fill them with the latest rule set. But on the other hand, it is kind of good to have an official book with the Inquisition rules in full print, so I guess there are both advantages and drawbacks. For the rules that are essentially already the same, we've got the Ordo Minoris. Basically, Inquisitors of the various different stripes can reroll attacks against certain different units, such as Ordo Malleus and Hereticus both being able to get 4 rerolls against anything Chaos, and Xenos getting 4 rerolls against any of the Xenos races, as we've already mentioned. Ordo Minoris was already a rule, but basically if you choose to take your Inquisitor from one of the slightly lesser Inquisitorial branches, such as the Ordo Kronos for example, they basically get 4 rerolls against any enemy characters, so in general it will make them fairly powerful when fighting characters across all armies. Otherwise they showed off the Puritan trait, which is +1 to their invul saves, and is a general warlord trait that any of the Inquisitors can pick. and the psychic power from the Ordo Malleus, which has been renamed strangely. It used to be power through knowledge, and now it's warding incantation, and you can basically use it to give any Imperium infantry or biker unit a 5+ invul save when they're within 12 inches of the psyker. This one's already a pretty good one, and a pretty good draw to the Ordo Malleus. Particularly things like Space Marines with a 3+ armor save will quite like this, as will any Imperial units with a slightly lesser armor save. Big units such as Imperial Guard conscripts are really quite a good example. I'd say the biggest excitement for this new article though are 2 new very good stratagems for the Codex Inquisition. First we have Clandestine Operation, which is basically a stratagem that allows you to set up an Inquisitor with scout deployment alongside a few of their supporting units should you want them. Basically you select 1 Infantry Inquisitor, so that's basically not Camerazov, the guy on the big throne, and you can also select up to 1 Acolyte, 1 Daemon Host and 1 Jokairo unit, and those units can be set up anywhere on the battlefield that's greater than 9 inches away from enemy models and greater than 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. All the models must be set up within 6 inches of the Inquisitor, and you can only use the stratagem once per battle. Now I think that this could be a really useful utility trick to have Inquisitors support other units that are advancing towards the enemy like this. I could really see this being a big boon to aiding things like Space Marine Scouts or Primaris Infiltrators or Incursors, and maybe stacking some powerful buffs on them and casting psychic debuffs on the enemy right from turn 1. You could also definitely be getting first turn charges with your Inquisitor setting up this close, so it'd be good for the fighty ones, things like Kotias with its Thunderhammer, and potentially even Mrs. Draxus herself with that Power Fist. For Psyker armies, it could also make Greyfax a bit of a nightmare to deal with as well. You could be getting that deny bubble very far up towards the enemy right from turn 1. Acolytes, Daemon Hosts and Jokairo can be useful as well, more so the Acolytes and Jokairo than the Demon Hosts really, but in any case they could certainly help add to the Alpha Strike, blazing away with plasma guns or those Jokairo beam weapons. Even if nothing else, this could allow you to put a threatening character on a midfield objective right from the get-go. Definitely a strong one I think. The other one is 1 command point for Alpha class Psyker, and again this is a pre-game stratagem where you select 1 Psyker Inquisitor from your army that is not a named character. Basically this model knows 1 additional psychic power from the Telethesia discipline and can attempt to deny 1 additional psychic power in the opponent's psychic phase. Now naturally this is only going to be usable if you're using non-named Inquisitors in the army, but if you're not then this one's an excellent buy-in against any enemy armies that are stacking Psykers. For me, knowing the extra psychic power is kind of useful, and it could certainly be good combined with the Ordo Malleus Warlord traits from the previous Inquisition book, provided it's still intact, where you're also able to cast another psychic power that same turn, so you could know a whole ton of powers and be able to cast at least 2 of them. Really though, I think that the deny is probably the most valuable part of this one, and it's just going to make life that little bit harder for armies such as Demons, Grey Knights or Thousand Sons, who often use a lot of Psykers. So all in all, there's some fun new rules for Kyria Draxus, nothing enormously outstanding at the moment, so I'd hope that she's going to be at least fairly cheap points wise, and I'm quite pleased that there are at least some decent upgrades for the Inquisition compared with their index. Fingers crossed for more besides these 2 stratagems when we actually get the full rules of the book. Let me know what you think of the changes down in the comments below, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you would like to see more details of these new previews as they come out, and of course we will be covering the full previews once we get our hands on Pariah. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd just like to mention that the Auspex Tactics channel does have a Patreon page, and it's how I can spend so much time making Warhammer 40k Tactics videos. If you have been enjoying, then any support on the Patreon is greatly appreciated, as the videos do take quite a long time to make. As well as supporting the channel, you do get access to some videos before anyone else gets to see them. There's regular Patreon polls on what sort of videos I'd like to see next, and regular prize draws where I post out big sets of Warhammer to various different patrons selected at random with a number generator. If any of that sounds good to you, then feel free to check out the link in the video description, and of course a big thank you to all of you guys who are already supporting. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.